The morning sun rose slowly over the wide Montana plains, casting long golden shadows across the dirt trail. Jacob Hayes, a single father of a bright-eyed boy named Eli, loaded the last sack of feed into the back of his old wagon. His small ranch had seen a rough winter-frozen pipes, a stubborn horse with a limp, and the constant worry of making ends meet, but he'd managed. Barely. Today he was heading into Red Willow, the nearest town, to stock up on flour, sugar, and whatever else he could carry. Eli was only 6, a small, wiry boy with a curiosity bigger than the mountains themselves. Jacob waved at him from the wagon. "Stay close to the cabin, son. I'll be back before sundown," he said, climbing into the driver's seat. Eli waved furiously, his small hand disappearing behind the thick blanket his mother had once knitted. Jacob urged his horse forward, the wheels crunching over frozen mud, and he breathed deep, letting the wind carry away the worry in his mind. He didn't know, though, that today would change more than his pantry's contents. Red Willow was quiet that morning. Only a few wagons moved along the main street, and the blacksmith's hammer rang steadily from the far end of town. Jacob guided his wagon past the saloon and the general store when he noticed movement near the river bridge. At first, he thought it was a child, a small bundle slumped on the bank. As he approached, the figure resolved into a woman, her dress soaked at the hem, her hair plastered to her face. She held a small tin cup in trembling hands. "Please, anyone," she whispered, voice breaking against the wind. "Just some food." Jacob slowed the wagon, feeling the stirrings of something he hadn't felt in years, a pull toward someone in need. He dismounted carefully, keeping his voice gentle. "Ma'am, are you all right?" The woman looked up. Her eyes, wide and haunted, met his. They were brown, warm, but clouded with exhaustion. I haven't eaten for 2 days," she admitted, her voice trembling. "My children, they're at home and I have nothing left." Jacob's chest tightened. He could see the worn edges of her dress, the thin frame beneath it, the way her hands clutched the cup as if it were a lifeline. "Where are you from?" he asked softly. She shook her head. I was married last month. My husband, he died in a riding accident. I barely had time to mourn before I was left alone, with nowhere to go and no one to help." Jacob swallowed. He thought of Eli and how it would feel to lose his only family. "I can't leave you here," he said, almost without thinking. "Come with me. We'll find something to eat and you can rest." The woman hesitated, pride and fear battling in her gaze. I can't impose. I don't even know your name." "Jacob Hayes," he said simply. "I have a small cabin a few miles out of town. You won't be imposing." "I promise." Her lips trembled as she tried to speak, but no words came. Finally, she nodded. I'm Sarah," she whispered. The ride to Jacob's cabin was silent, except for the occasional creak of the wagon wheels and the soft snort of the horse. Sarah held her shawl tight around her shoulders, and Jacob kept glancing back to make sure she was warm. The plain stretched endlessly around them, dusted with the last hints of frost, and the sky burned a pale blue streaked with clouds. When they arrived at the cabin, Eli was waiting at the door, small arms folded across his chest. "Papa, who's that?" he asked, curiosity bright in his eyes. "This is Sarah," Jacob said, helping her down from the wagon. "She's going to stay for a while. She's tired and hungry." Eli's eyes widened. "You're going to live with us?" Sarah hesitated, then smiled softly. "If that's all right." Eli grinned. "It's more than all right." Jacob led her inside and set a warm bowl of soup before her. She ate hungrily but quietly, the gratitude in her eyes unmistakable. Jacob poured himself a cup of tea and watched her, thinking of the long road she must have traveled, both physically and in heartache. Over the next few days, Sarah began to settle into the small cabin. She helped Eli with chores, mended clothes, and even coaxed a smile from the boy with stories of faraway rivers and mountains. Jacob found himself looking forward to her quiet presence by the fire, the way her laugh filled the small space, and the ease with which she handled the little surprises life had thrown at them. Winter deepened, and the snow began to pile high against the cabin walls. The days were short and the nights long. Jacob worked tirelessly, chopping wood, tending to the animals, and making sure his small family stayed fed. Sarah, in turn, kept the home warm, baked bread, and taught Eli to read from an old dog-eared book they found in the corner of the cabin. One evening, a fierce wind blew through the valley, rattling the windows and sending icy drafts across the floor. Jacob returned from feeding the animals to find Sarah near the stove, brushing flour from her hands. "You shouldn't have gone out in that wind," she said softly. "You'll catch a cold." "I've been out in worse," he said, shrugging, though his teeth chattered slightly. She shook her head, stepping closer to brush a wet curl from his face. "You don't have to face the world alone anymore," she said. Her words struck him in a way he couldn't ignore. He reached out, holding her hands gently in his own. "I didn't realize how much I needed someone," he admitted quietly. Her eyes glistened, and she smiled faintly. "Neither did I." By spring, the cabin felt alive with warmth and laughter. Flowers peeked from the thawing earth, and the sun lingered longer over the hills. Sarah and Jacob worked side by side to mend fences, feed the animals, and teach Eli how to ride safely. One morning, as they all walked toward the river to collect water, Eli tugged at Jacob's sleeve. "Papa, are you going to marry Sarah?" Jacob looked at Sarah, and she laughed softly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I think we will," she said simply. Eli clapped his hands and ran ahead, shouting for the birds as they flew over the river. Jacob smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest, a feeling he hadn't known since his wife's passing. A few weeks later, the small town of Red Willow witnessed an unexpected event. Under the old oak tree near the church, Jacob and Sarah exchanged simple vows. Eli carried a bouquet of wild flowers he had picked from the edge of the meadow. The townsfolk watched quietly, many with tears in their eyes, some whispering about the kindness of the man who had given a widow and her children a new home. When Jacob and Sarah kissed, the first snow of spring dusted the tree branches, sparkling like a blessing. Eli laughed, running circles around them, and the three of them stood together under the pale sun, a family reborn from grief and hardship. That evening, as the wind rustled the trees, Jacob, Sarah, and Eli sat on the cabin porch, holding hands and watching the sun set behind the hills. The past winter, with all its fear and hunger, felt like a distant memory. The present held warmth, laughter, and love hard-earned but infinitely precious. Sarah rested her head on Jacob's shoulder. "Funny," she whispered. "You came to town for flour and sugar and ended up giving me a family." Jacob smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "The best supplies I ever found." Eli laughed again, chasing fireflies as the first stars appeared. For the Hayes family, home was not just a place, it was each other. And with that, the cabin stood full of warmth, hope, and a love that had been worth the journey. Moral: kindness and compassion can change lives. When we offer help without hesitation, it can grow into trust, family, and a love that heals the deepest wounds.